the most important person. If you're by yourself, then that is you, because there's no one else there. And the most important thing to do is to care. Then you'll be practicing mindfulness throughout your daily life. It's not effort, it's attitude. So if you do that, you can have a very successful life no matter what you're doing. It's very easy. That was Tolstoy. The Emperor's three questions. Now's the most important time. The one in front of you is the most important person. The most important thing to do is to care. So I've been telling all the health professionals, the most important task for a health professional is not to cure people. It's to care for people. If it's to cure people, then sometimes in the death process, the interventions are so extreme, it causes huge amounts of discomfort to the person dying. They're trying to cure them, they're forgetting to care for them. Which means that some of the deaths are very, very uncomfortable. I'm sure you won't want to die like that. With so many tubes and people fussing over you. You want to die peacefully. So if caring becomes more important than curing, then you understand how to look after people. More people will survive. I like telling this. Is Dr. J still here? No, this over here. In Jerusalem, I got the paper in Australia. In Jerusalem, some years ago, the doctors went on strike for 2 or 3 weeks. The doctors never turned up at work. In those 2 or 3 weeks, the death rate plummeted in Jerusalem. Not so many people died when the doctors weren't working. It's true. So sometimes you begin to wonder what's going on. So sometimes it's good to care for people rather than curing them. So that's how to be mindful in the present moment, the one in front of you. Is the most important thing to do is to care. You try that in your work, or in your family life, or in your private life, you'll be very successful. That makes sense? Come on, let's get some more.
I have a jhana question.
Jhana question, okay.
To reach the arupa jhanas,
rupas.
Do you have to proceed stage by stage through the rupa jhanas? And the reason why I ask is there's a little debate online, some online discussions, whether the prior teachers of the Buddha before his enlightenment, Alara Kalaman, Udaka if they actually taught rupa jhana to the Buddha or not, or did they just go straight to arupa jhana?
Okay. Number one, as far as my experience is concerned, you can never get to the arupas without the jhanas. These are special cases of the fourth jhana. You may have heard me give a simile which I developed based on an old Buddhist simile of the jewel in the 1,000-petal lotus. The practice of meditation. Again, there's no samatha, there's no vipassana, there's no anapana, there's no metta. Just all of those are just names just describe the same process. It's a simile of the lotus, which at night closes up. And the outermost petals of that lotus are always very rough, dirty, without any fragrance at all, because they have to withstand the weather. And in the early morning, when the first light and warmth of the sun hit that lotus, the outermost petals warm up and it opens out to reveal the layer of petals inside, which is more beautiful, still quite rough and thick, and starts to have a little bit of fragrance. And that allows those layer of petals to receive the light and warmth of the sun, so they open up. Now revealing the second layer of petals, so they can receive the light and warmth of the sun, so they can open up, and the next one opens up. The deeper you go, the more delicate, beautiful and fragrant are the petals. That's how you open up a lotus. And that simile is you, to open your body and mind up, to find out exactly what's inside. That's what happens. And first of all, the warmth and light of the sun and compassion, kindness, warmth, and the light of mindfulness. You do need both to meditate. And if you have the mindfulness and kindness just on your body, in other words, you relax your body, trying to find a good posture, so your body's really comfortably relaxed, it disappears. You go inside to your mental world. In the mental world, you have all the past and the future. You just shine your mindfulness and kindness on that. And soon the past and the future disappears. You go inside time, the next layer of petals. You just stay in the present moment, and soon you become silent. You go into the middle of thought, and another layer of petals is opened up. You don't need to go looking for the breath. Just stay in the present moment, be kind, be aware, and you find the breath appears to you. It's the only last thing moving. Everything else is still. Just keep being mindful and kind of the breath. You don't even try to get to any other stage. You're just right there. And sooner or later the breath becomes delightful. And the piti sukha, the joy, arises with the breath. You just don't do anything else the whole path. Just being kind, being aware, waiting for things to happen, being patient. And soon the breath gets so even it disappears. And then you see the beautiful lights in the mind, the nimittas. This is where the five senses have vanished. You've let go of a lot. And then what you do when you get these lights, these nimittas, you continue just being kind, being aware. Don't do anything different. And soon you enter the jhana. And in the middle of the first jhana is the second, middle of the second is the third. You have to go right into the center of the third to get the fourth. You never go on to any other stage in meditation. You always go into the stage you're in now. You have to go through the jhanas to get to the rupas. I can't see any other way. And it seems from the sutras, the way the Buddha taught, again it seems there's no other way. So the problem with those two teachers, first of all, Uddaka Rama Putta, he never taught the rupas. That was Uddaka Rama was the teacher, Ramaputta was the disciple. So there's a disciple. But anyway, it seems very unlikely that could have been based on jhanas. The only solution which I proposed a long time ago was that these were not the real things. In the same way that you can get a degree these days just by writing off to some universities, sending $100 or whatever the cost is, and you get a degree by return of post. The standard always goes down. Even PhDs. Many of you remember Goethe's Dr. Faustus, famous German book. Dr. Faustus, when he got his PhD in medieval Germany, maybe 1600, 1700, about that time, they'd only ever award one PhD, maybe 10 or 15 years. Just one. So to get a PhD in those days, I mean, it really was a high academic achievement. These days, US, Europe, PhDs are pretty easy. So standards always go down. And I think that's probably what happened there. It wasn't the real immaterial attainments, fake ones. As in all these days. Jhanas are now important. I guess one of the other missions which I fought for when I first started talking about jhanas, I got a lot of criticism from my fellow monks. You can't do that. You've read the sutras, it's obvious, they're important. So I taught them, but now they're quite popular, and many people teach them. And there's a group of famous teachers in the US. What they teach is jhana. They call jhana light, L-I-T-E. It's not the real thing, but they want to achieve it so much, they give it a name. So that's on the internet, but that's what I can say. Go on.
My question actually was about the internet, and if I think I know what the answer is already, but it took thousands of years for Buddhism to travel out of India through China to Japan to the Western world, and yet now we can achieve just immense things in such a short period of time due to the fact that we have this enormous amount of access to information. For instance, as I said, that I took precepts from your website. Do you see that as, I kind of feel like maybe you are going to feel that may not be as positive an impact as I was thinking.
Yeah, it's a very positive impact, it's a double-edged sword. So many people can put things on the internet, you don't know who's got experience, who's got authority and who hasn't. So yeah, there's a lot of good stuff on the internet, there's a lot of rubbish as well. So people look up, a Buddhist website, they don't know, who is this fellow? What authority have they got? Are they making up themselves or what? So that's why, here we go. So that's why that you have to use the internet, with judiciously. The information's there for the understanding of how to use that information, and to know what is authoritative and what isn't. That's a difficult challenge in a modern age. With the freedom of expression also comes the understanding that many crazy people will also say things. And the problem is an old Buddhist saying, it is the great rivers which flow silently. The small streams make all the noise. So sometimes the people who know what they're talking about don't speak loudly enough. That's one of the difficulties. But on another side issue, you say it took thousands of years for Buddhism to come to the West. No, it did not. It's been here much longer than we think. That is one of the fascinating parts of Buddhist history, is the movement of people from India to Alexandria in Egypt. I love this little story because there's so many interesting pieces of thread which do need to be woven together into a story. And that was that in the time of the Buddha, or just afterwards, there was a growing trade between India and Europe, not over the land route, but starting from the town of Soparika, just north of Bombay, and across the Persian Gulf. And it stopped in modern-day Aden, which was a very old port, and records of the time said that port was dominated by Greeks, Jews, and Indians, the three main communities in Aden. And from there they would go up the Red Sea. Philadelphus Ptolemy, about 2nd century BC, built a huge port to receive the trade. And there was also a large Indian community in Alexandria. And that's, even today, there are, in that port city, there are gravestones with the Dhammacakka on it, and even the three refuges, Buddham Saramagacchami, Dhammam Saramagacchami, Sangham Saramagacchami, and the gravestones of Indians who died 2nd century BC. There was Buddhism in Greece, or in Alexandria, 2nd century BC. And Philo of Alexandria, who was a great historian, 2 or 3 of the modern era, described a monastery just south of Alexandria called where the Therapeutae lived, both male and female, bald-head, brown-bone vegetarians. And when I first noticed that, it was obvious this must be Buddhist monks, because there was no other celibate order, in that time. It had no precedent at all from European culture or even North African culture. So one of my friends who was a monk, he was a scholar in ancient Greek. So I challenged him next time he'd go home, he was a Swiss man, please check up to see if in the ancient Greek these are Buddhist monks. I remember the letter he wrote back to me. He said, I thought you were crazy at first, but when I read it in the ancient Greek, because I know what a Buddhist monk is, because I'm one myself, this is obvious. He said it's a dead ringer for Buddhist monks. 234 AD, there was a big monastery. And Phil of Alexandria said there's thousands more of these monks to the south of Egypt. And that confused me for a while, because there was no Buddhist monks in Sudan or Ethiopia. There certainly were thousands in India, and that's what he meant by the south, because the route was to the south. He was referring to India. Those were Buddhist monks, 2nd, 3rd, 4th century. Sorry, 2, 3, 4 in our common era. And of course you know the next thing which happened. There was this guy called Jesus who fled Palestine to go to Egypt. They don't say in the Bible where he went to, but it's also obvious he would have gone to Alexandria. Cairo was just a village at that time. That was the capital, that was where the work was. So it's almost obvious that he would have gone to Alexandria. And what was the most famous group of spiritual people there? The Buddhist monks. Therapeutite, by the way, is the corruption of Theravada. So as Buddhist monks, Theravada tradition. So he would have hung out with them. And if he'd have gone back to, like, if you were to get interested in Buddhism, you may go to Sri Lanka or you may go to Dharamsala to see the Dalai Lama. You always go to where the strength of that religion is. And at that particular time, it was the Indian Emperor Kanishka. He was a very powerful emperor of India, very devout Buddhist. And that was the time of Jesus Christ, Kanishka's India. And his empire, or his capital, was in Kashmir, in Srinagar. And so, if Jesus was interested in Buddhism, which is probably, he would have gone to where the central Buddhism was, which was in Kashmir. And that's where we get the legend, which many of you have heard about, of because Kashmir is now Muslim, of Yusuf, whose shrine is now in Kashmir, and all the local Muslims say that that was Jesus, who survived the crucifixion. And that's where a German count, just after the Second World War, he was hiking in Ladakh, which is just to the east of Kashmir. He broke his leg, so he had to hole up in a Buddhist monastery in the capital, Leh. While he was there, he just asked the abbot if he could use the library, something to do. So he used the library, and that's where he came across this ancient manuscript saying about this monk called Issa, who had come from Palestine, become a monk in Kashmir, gone back again, being crucified, survived, and then came back again where he became a famous healer. And when this fellow published that in Europe, of course, as they say, the shit hit the fan in Christianity. This can't be Jesus, he couldn't have been a Buddhist monk. And so they sent a team out to try and find out whether this manuscript existed or not. By that time, the abbot had gone into Tibet, the Chinese had invaded, he hadn't come back, they couldn't appoint a new abbot until they were sure he was dead. And after about 10 or 15 years, they eventually said, okay, he must be dead. And so they appointed a new abbot, opened the library, and that manuscript's there. So when you hear people say that Jesus was a Buddhist monk, there's actually some evidence to support it. And if you are really interested in that, look up the Gnostic Gospels, otherwise known as the Nag Hammadi Library. At the same time as the Dead Sea Scrolls were found, it was the same year, in the south of Egypt, and some archaeologists found this peasant lighting his fire with ancient papyrus. It was such a waste. And it turned out to be this store of ancient scrolls which he found, the sayings of Jesus. Very different than you find in the Christian Bible. Sayings such as, he who knows themselves knows the truth of all things. Or one of my favourite stories of God in heaven saying, I'm the best, I'm the chief, I'm the creator, I'm the foremost, the all-powerful, the omniscient. And then God hears a voice, no you're not. There are other beings in this universe you don't even know about. What are you talking about? Who said that? And that's in the sayings of Jesus. Interesting stuff. So, has Buddhism been in our Western culture before? My goodness, it has. Yeah, go.
Then I'll ask a follow-up question.
Yeah, go.
Where are we going to go from here? Because it's not American culture for monastics. We don't really haven't. It's never been part of our culture to support monastics.
But isn't America is one of these great cultures which always innovates, which never says it's our tradition. You don't believe in traditions. You just try new things. If it works, we do it. And look, in the United States, you are a leader in equality and non-discrimination. It's part of your constitution. And so just because I'm also born in the West, I became quite well known as a social activist, not just for women's rights by ordaining them as bhikkhunis, but also for the gay and lesbian community. And in fact, once when His Holiness the Dalai Lama was quoted as saying, "You can't be gay and a Buddhist, period," that appeared in the newspapers, and many gay, lesbian, transgender Buddhists who were my disciples were really shocked. They said, "At last we thought we found a religion which could accept us. What's going on?" I said, "Well, the Dalai Lama's wrong here." And I actually put a letter in the newspaper sort of saying, "Well, really respect the Dalai Lama, but on this one he's made a big mistake." The Buddha never said anything at all to exclude any person or any sort of sexual orientation at all. He made a mistake. I got a lot of flack from some Tibetan Buddhist monks, but I also got an invitation as a result of that letter to our local gay and lesbian Mardi Gras breakfast, where I could give a talk. So, I was heterosexual, I wasn't gay. But then I started to give a speech. I'd say, women are being discriminated against, other races are being discriminated against. And even in the United States, some people say that gay homosexuality is not natural. It can be cured, they say. That is so gross. But now most people understand it's okay to be gay. But the one remaining part of discrimination in this country is celibacy. Too many people say celibacy is unnatural. And now, as a monk, I feel the same as gays felt 20 years ago, that celibacy can be cured. So now I am starting celibate rights. When you put it that way, it's very interesting, because people do that. I've seen them say, "You guys are weird. You're unnatural. How can a male live without sex for so many years?" And so much so that even my own father, it's one of his favourite jokes, "What fun does a monk have?" And the answer is none. Come on.
That's a Catholic joke.
N-U-N. What fun does a monk have? N-U-N, okay. Or N-O-N-E. Whichever way you want. Okay, you've got it now. So sometimes people doubt celibacy.
What I didn't,
Yeah.
certainly didn't mean that. I meant that the Catholic Church has the tradition of monasteries and monks and celibacy and all this, and yet they're rapidly they're in great decline as far as there's not enough priests.
Exactly, and that is obviously because of the less celibacy is imposed, there's no supporting mechanism of meditation, the spirituality is not really there, it's a belief system rather than spiritual Gnosticism, a big discovery. But I can see it is growing in places like, now Australia is not that different from the United States. The same sort of ethos, the same sense of freedom. And for the Australians, in their history, they had a defining moment